Tonight, guilty plea. Prison time for a Dawson Creek drive-by shooting. Being held. A wildfire breaks out west of Taylor. And rethinking High on Ice. Changes being considered to Fort St. John's Winter Festival. Well, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us. And we begin tonight with a guilty plea in connection with the drive-by shooting in Dawson Creek at the beginning of the year. Jesse Bujold has been sentenced to jail for 2 years after pleading guilty in BC Supreme Court. Back in mid-January, violence erupting on the streets of Dawson Creek. A witness said 4 shots were fired at a residence on 103rd Avenue. The person living at the home at the time is the girlfriend of well-known criminal Tanner Murray. Well, the next morning, more shots ringing out, this time at a home on 119th Avenue. A police officer was also allegedly shot at responding to the scene. No one was injured in any of the shootings. 3 people were charged. Bujold has since pled guilty to 1 count of unauthorized possession of a firearm in a motor vehicle. He was also handed 10 months probation and a 10-year firearm prohibition. Bujold was not previously known to Dawson Creek RCMP. He has, however, been found guilty in the past of 2 counts of trafficking a controlled substance in Calgary back in 2009. Well, now to a tasing incident following a mental health incident in Fort St. John. RCMP say a taser was deployed after a lengthy police standoff. Mounties saying the incident happened on the evening of September the 17th in the area of 86th Street and 85th Avenue. RCMP officers, along with a crisis negotiator, paramedics, and the fire department all attended the call involving a person dealing with a mental health issue. Police say a taser was used out of concern for the individual, as it was believed they would harm themselves. Now, following the incident, the person was taken to hospital. The BC Wildfire Service says a 2-hectare wildfire was discovered south of Fort St. John this weekend. According to the Wildfire Service, the fire started Sunday. It's located just south of the Peace River, 7 kilometers west of Taylor. The wildfire was still listed out of control this morning, but its status has since been changed to being held just before noon. Firefighters are still on scene as the wildfire is projected to stay within its current perimeter. The Wildfire Service suspects the fire was human-caused. The BC Centre for Disease Control has confirmed 2 new cases of the measles across the province. Health officials saying these 2 measles cases were reported in the Northern Health region, and that brings the total for the Northeast to 195 cases this year. The centre adds that the province has yet to record a death associated with the measles in 2025. It says 73% of the cases across BC are from the Northern Health region. The City of Fort St. John is exploring ways to reinvent the 2026 edition of the High on Ice Winter Festival. City staff say the 2025 edition brought many challenges due to the extreme cold and high cost. Last year, the festival took place from February the 14th to the 17th, and staff say it was mainly attracting crowds on warmer days. Sponsorships and grants brought in around $146,000, but that only covered the cost of ice carvers and staffing. Now, staff are considering a new proposal for this year's festival. They discussed a month-long event in February with a spread-out schedule to sustain attendance numbers regardless of weather. The city would focus on smaller but more frequent events organized with local groups instead of one 4-day festival. The city may also step away from the name High on Ice and simply call the event Winterfest. And a reminder, the first day of fall, that winter driving conditions are right around the corner. Winter tires will be required on select BC highways starting on October the 1st. The province requires passenger vehicles to have snow tires if they're traveling on any highway here in the north, the interior, and some sections of highways across the rest of British Columbia. According to the Ministry of Transportation, appropriate winter tires will display either the M+S symbol or a mountain or snowflake symbol. If you're caught on the roads without winter tires, you could be fined up to $121. The leader of the BC Conservative Party is keeping his job. John Rustad has just survived a key leadership review, cementing his position despite losing the last provincial election. Rustad says party members have given him a mandate to lead. 70.66% of party members voted to support his leadership. The party says that 1,268 members voted in the review, where Roostad secured support in 78 out of the 93 ridings across the province. Roostad says the process has localized democracy, and it's allowed all of the members to not only vote on the review, but share their concerns with him directly. The announcement ends a process that started this spring with an automatic leadership review after the leader of the party loses an election. Issues of homelessness and mental health are top of mind this week as leaders of local governments gather in Victoria for their annual convention. UBCM President and Coquitlam Councillor Trudy Mandeo says the issues are a major concern for many communities across the province. She says local governments are doing their best to help, but the province isn't doing enough to add supportive housing, detox, and addiction treatment. The conference will wrap up with a speech from Premier David Eby on Friday. Well, 3 weeks into job action, the BC General Employees Union is putting liquor and cannabis warehouses behind picket lines.
This morning, our BCGEU members across 4 liquor and cannabis distribution warehouses across the province of British Columbia walked off the job. That effectively shuts down liquor and cannabis distribution across the province.
2,000 workers at warehouses in Burnaby, Delta, Richmond, and Kamloops walked off the job this morning. They joined more than 10,000 workers taking job action at 36 locations across British Columbia, including 28 active picket lines. The union is demanding wage increases that match inflation and say escalation will continue until the government returns to the bargaining table. It appears today could be the day that 400 ostriches in Edgewood, BC meet their fate. It comes after multiple legal attempts to save them and even some high-profile celebrity support from south of the border. CTV's Abigail Beeman reports.
The farm spokesperson in BC's interior said by early this morning there was a convoy of about 70 vehicles, including police and others, and by late morning BC time, they were waiting to go through search warrants with their lawyer.
Today is life versus death. Today we need to choose life.
Universal Ostrich Farm says the dozens of vehicles on site include the RCMP and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and there's a command post set up in Edgewood, BC. Hundreds of people have been watching this YouTube live feed of the birds as the day unfolds. The RCMP would only tell CTV News the CFIA is the lead agency. Police are there to keep the peace and enforce the law, while the CFIA did not respond at all by deadline. The farm was anticipating the inspection agency would carry out the call of about 400 ostriches by early this week and put out a call for supporters for help. And during this lengthy saga, the farm has had no shortage of big-name supporters, including the U.S. Secretary for Health, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who wrote to the CFIA in May hoping to save the ostriches, saying there would be significant value in studying their immune response to avian flu. This all began last December when the CFIA ordered the ostriches to be destroyed following an outbreak of avian flu. The farm spokesperson says it's been more than 200 days with no testing, and the animals have been healthy that whole time. The farm lost its bid to stop the call in federal court and is in the middle of asking the Supreme Court to hear its case, which would include an emergency stay of the call. Abigail Beeman, CTV News, Ottawa.
Now, 2 of Ottawa's 5 so-called nation-building projects recommended for approval are linked to copper production. The critical mineral is becoming even more valuable as the world shifts to greener energy. CTV's Alison Bamford reports.
The shiny material is actually chalcopyrite.
Shiny and gold, but it's actually copper, and this ore is becoming more valuable.
If the plan going forward is to electrify everything, then you're going to need more copper.
Copper conducts electricity. You can find it in any home or building, technology like phones, computers, and vehicles. It's especially critical for electric cars, AI data centers, and a greener future.
The demand for copper is not going to go down.
But Canadian copper production has, dropping nearly 25% between 2014 and 2023. That's where Saskatchewan's McIlvenna Bay project comes into play. The copper and zinc mine is expected to begin operation next year. It's one of 5 nation-building projects selected by the federal government in hopes of bolstering the country's supply.
We're really looking at developing a mining district here. We know there's more copper in the ground.
Canada has less than 1% of the global copper reserves. Chile has the highest percentage. BC and Ontario account for most of our country's production. Geologists say more copper is out there, but exploration costs money and it doesn't come with a guarantee.
We've gone a long time without a new copper zinc mine coming into production in Canada, let alone Saskatchewan. So I think it's going to really help focus even more investment.
Along with Saskatchewan's mining project, an expansion to the Red Chris mine in northwest BC also made Ottawa's list. That project is expected to increase Canada's annual copper production by more than 15%. Allison Bamford, CTV News, Saskatoon.
With the ongoing trade war with the U.S., Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is saying Canada should not settle for a deal that includes sectoral tariffs.
Copy my idea. Take the Canadian Sovereignty Act, pass it into law. Let's unlock a massive building boom in this country through the power of free enterprise. And then we can go to the Americans and say, look, we actually do have options now because our economy is booming and our markets are growing.
Poilievre says if he were Prime Minister, he would seek a tariff-free deal. Canada and the United States have been in ongoing negotiations for a new economic and security deal for months now. Poilievre added that he believes the key is to become more self-reliant so Canada has the leverage to negotiate with Donald Trump. World leaders are in New York City this week. The United Nations 80th General Assembly gets underway, and front and center is the question of Palestinian statehood. More than 150 countries, including most recently Canada, have officially recognized Palestine, and it's a political decision that now puts several G7 countries in conflict with both Israel and the United States. Judy Trin reports.
As we meet, civilians are targeted and international law trampled in Gaza, the Ukraine, Sudan, and beyond.
As the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly opens, growing support for Palestinian statehood dominates the agenda. 3 G7 nations, Britain, France, and Canada, are recognizing the state of Palestine to apply political pressure to end the war in Gaza.
We have to push on this now because, as I say, the possibility in absolute violation of the UN Charter and an absolute violation of international law of self-determination for the Palestinian peoples is being erased.
Carney says Hamas would not have a role in governance. Instead, Canada, in a coordinated effort with like-minded countries, will work with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank toward a two-state solution in a plan for peace that could also call for troops.
There are many proposals, as I suspect you're aware, from a variety of Arab states, combination of Arab states and European states, to which Canada would be party.
It has been nearly 2 years since the October 7th attacks, but Israel's prime minister has vowed not to stop the war until Hamas is eradicated.
The starvation and devastation are utterly intolerable.
It is not diplomacy. When Hamas is praising this conference and calling it the fruit of October 7th, we know it's a problem.
4 of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, Britain, France, Russia, and China, recognize Palestine, except for the United States.
He feels this does not do anything to release the hostages, which is the primary goal right now in Gaza, does nothing to end this conflict and bring this war to a close. And frankly, he believes it's a reward to Hamas.
U.S. President Donald Trump will make his stance clear when he speaks in front of the UN General Assembly on Tuesday. Right now, 150 nations recognize the state of Palestine, but the one country that has the most influence on Israel, the United States, does not. Judy Trin, CTV News, New York.
And the Washington Post is reporting that the White House is expected to tie pregnant women's use of the over-the-counter pain medication Tylenol to autism. That would go against medical guidelines, which says Tylenol is safe. Federal health officials have been reviewing previous research on the potential link. Well, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is arguing that the states are experiencing an autism epidemic fueled by what he calls environmental toxins. Donald Trump previewed the announcement on Saturday, saying it would be one of the most important things that his administration does. Thousands of people gathered to attend the memorial service for conservative activist Charlie Kirk in Glendale, Arizona this weekend, and it was an emotional affair as Kirk's widow called for peace and dialogue in the wake of the tragedy.
My husband, Charlie, he wanted to save young men just like the one who took his life.
Several top White House officials were also in attendance. U.S. President Trump spoke for over a half hour, praising Kirk as both a martyr and a great American hero. Nearly a week after being suspended, Disney says Jimmy Kimmel Live will be back on air tomorrow night. A statement released by the company on the show's return says, in part, quote, "It is a decision we made because we felt some of the comments were ill-timed and thus insensitive. We've spent the last days having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy," end quote. The show was pulled last week over comments Kimmel made about the assassination of Charlie Kirk, a move that sparked concerns around the world about free speech in the United States. All right, please do stay tuned. Noah will be right back after the break with weather.